is Glenn Hughes, the voice of rock, and you're listening to Music Mania.
You ready for some screaming heavy metal? We rock!
But the evil that men do lives on.
We gonna bang your head!
You are now listening to the Music Mania podcast, brought to you by CD Warehouse in Gladstone, the #1 hard rock podcast in the Midwest, featuring hard-hitting interviews with rock's living legends. And now, here's your host, Clint Schweitzer.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have seen the truth, and the truth has set me free. Clint Schweitzer, Music Mania podcast, but this show is not about us whatsoever. It is about one of my favorite up-and-coming bands. The band is Crazy Lixx. They hail from Sweden. We are going to be joined by guitarist Jens Lundgren coming up here. Going to be joining us via Skype from Sweden to talk about the band's latest album, Forever Wild. It is an absolute hair metal masterpiece all the way from Scandinavia. Yes, Crazy Lixx have been at this for 17 years now, and just now really starting to break through. And you hope that, in America, that they're able to gain a foothold. They've been on the road. They've got some shows coming up in Europe and in Germany. But I'll tell you what, if you're a fan of loud screeching guitars, choruses for days, if you like that production value that came from the 80s from bands like Def Leppard, Motley Crue, Poison, Whitesnake, Winger, Danger Danger, then Crazy Lixx is the band for you. Let me introduce them to you guys. I'll tell you, I could not be a bigger proponent for a band. It's like they reach every single musical taste of mine. They hit every nerve, and their latest album, Forever Wild, is my favorite hard rock album of the last decade. I am not exaggerating. You can go to our website right now, musicmaniapodcast.com, where I've recently written an article about Crazy Lixx and how they are the metal heroes that we all deserve right now. Go check that out. Check out the band. Go to crazylixx.com right now to order the album. It is Forever Wild. Of course, it's on Amazon and Spotify, iTunes, and all of that. If you ever listen to one thing I have to say about one band, I hope that you will check out Crazy Lixx, because I have been championing them for many years now. But their last two albums, 2017's Rough Justice and now Forever Wild, it is the band's masterpiece. It is absolute melodic hard rock perfection. If you're a fan, like I said, of that 80s style, driving hard rock, hair metal, whatever you want to call it, Crazy Lixx is for you. From the image to the sound, they've got it all. And we're going to be talking to Jens Lundgren about his journey. He's been in the band for just a couple years now, but he's been a part of the band's two best albums. And Crazy Lixx, you just got to hope at some point that a promoter takes a chance on Crazy Lixx, bringing them to America to do a proper tour, because America demands and deserves this type of music in 2019. We need it in America. We need it all over the world. It is so uniting. And I'll tell you, if you need a summer hard rock album to get you through these hot summer months, Forever Wild is definitely your album. It is definitely in vein of something like Rat's Detonator. It takes me back to that kind of sound and that kind of production and those kind of guitars. Of course, you got Danny Rexon. He's the lead singer. Definitely a tremendous frontman. The band has, gone through some evolutions over the years, but is very solidified now. And we talked to bassist Jens Solholm a couple years ago about Rough Justice. That band is still in its current incarnation. So, Crazy Lixx. Go to the website, crazylixx.com. You can get all the information. Look them up. Check out the video for Silent Thunder. It's on YouTube now. It's definitely an homage to Top Gun. Definitely has that 80s naval aviator vibe going on, and you're going to want to check that out, because Top Gun 2, it's coming out next summer. Maybe they want to use Crazy Lixx on the soundtrack. I don't know. All I'll tell you is that, on this show, we love to find bands that are kind of under the radar, and this is one that I want to bring to the forefront and do a show centered specifically around Crazy Lixx. This is all about Forever Wild, all about this band from Sweden that has been grinding for 17 years. And here they are on the precipice of greatness, and we hope we can help push them over the edge. Go to the website, musicmaniapodcast.com. You can read my article again on why they are the heavy metal saviors that we deserve in America right now. So huge summer, of course, for us here on the Music Mania podcast. I am backlogged with interviews. There's going to be so much coming up, guys. In just a couple weeks, I've got Vixen coming up here at the Edgerton Downtown Days. Going to be checking out my ladies, Vixen. I got Cher Ross coming up in an interview on a future podcast. I've got Ron Keel coming up for sure. That's going to be, just a tremendous one. I got so much coming up on this podcast. We are backlogged with interviews. It's going to take us through the summer. That's what this show's all about. You already know the songs on this show. We tell you the stories, and we're going to be doing that all summer long. In addition, of course, to hitting lots of shows. We gave you our coverage from Rocklahoma from just a couple weeks ago. What a tremendous event that is. Braving the weather, as we always do. Finding a way to stay comfortable in that cushy media tent. That's key for one. When you get to be my age, you don't want to be out there, slinging mud with the average person, the average concert person out there because, I just don't have it in me anymore. I'm used to kind of being on the media side now. I've lost the edge, if you will. So anyway, a lot of big stuff coming up. You can send me an email, musicmaniapodcast@gmail.com, if you have questions or concerns or any advice coming up for the summer. If you've got a show you want to review, we're glad to put it on our website. So hit us up there. We're going to be giving away tickets, guys, coming up this summer to the Louder Than Life Festival. So stay tuned for that. That is a festival featuring bands like Guns N' Roses, Stone Temple Pilots, Rob Zombie, Marilyn Manson, Slipknot. It's going to be in Louisville, Kentucky. It's going to be September 24th, 25th, and 26th. So be on the lookout for that. There's going to be a lot. We're going to be giving away passes to that event as the summer rolls along. So be sure to like the Facebook page. Hit us up on Twitter at MusicMania_show. And of course, before we get to our interview with Jens Lundgren, from Crazy Lixx, got to tell you about our sponsor, CD Warehouse in Gladstone, Missouri. Guys, for over 22 years, a staple of the Northland. They buy, sell, and trade CDs, DVDs, vinyl, and more. Do not let the vibe of the old school record store go by the wayside. Go visit them today off Antioch Road in Gladstone. Once again, tell them Music Mania sent you, and there will be a discount, or it's on us. CD Warehouse in Gladstone, 22 years, a staple of the Northland. Louder Than Life, America's premier 3-day rock festival, comes to Louisville's Hiley Festival grounds at the KY Expo Center, September 27th through 29th, starring Guns N' Roses, Slipknot, Disturbed, Rob Zombie, Godsmack, Marilyn Manson, Breaking Benjamin, Chevelle, Hailstorm, and many more. Single day and weekend passes are available now at louderthanlifefestival.com. Experience it live. Well, I tell you what, it is a huge pleasure for us to welcome our very special guest this week on the Music Mania podcast. It is guitarist Jens Lundgren, joining us all the way from Sweden. He is, of course, the guitarist from Crazy Lixx. Jens, thanks so much for staying up late with this man and talking about the new album, Forever Wild. I know this has been a crazy time for you. Let's talk about that album. Just kind of talk about this album and what it means to you, my friend.
And this album is Rough Justice was a little bit darker. We call it like driving car in the middle of the night kind of album. But for a while, it's more like a summer feeling, this feel good around some of the songs. So it's not that difference, but I think we took another step, like to a more like feel good atmosphere, if you like to say. So, but my work on the album has been, we recorded most parts of the album in my studio, the drums and the guitars and stuff like that. So we really tried to capture this, this vintage feeling when you put condenser mics in the hallway, in the staircase, when you really record the acoustics of the drums. We used like 20 mics on the drum set. Stereo miking the cymbals and over and under, and in the hallway, as I said. And I was in contact with Chris Laney, the guy who has mixed almost all the Crazy Lixx albums, and he told me like what he wanted me to change on this album compared to the last album. So we just did what we did on Rough Justice, and we tried to take it up a notch, and I think that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, like I said, to me, this is the hard rock album of the decade. To me, it's like one of those albums that fits into my taste 100%. And I was a huge fan of Rough Justice. I've been a fan of the band since the beginning. But for what this is, I don't think people realize that you know. And I'm glad you described kind of the recording process, because I was going to ask about that, because it just sounds like guitars on top of guitars. It's so well produced, from backing vocals and everything, every instrument. It just sounds. It's not. You know what it sounds like? It sounds like Pyromania, Def Leppard's Pyromania. You know what I mean?
Thanks.
Kind of
Yeah, I know.
production
Yeah.
that's. And I don't know if that's what you guys were going for, but just that sleek production. The songs are huge. You got, everyone's seen the video for Silent Thunder now. Were you kind of going for like a Top Gun vibe there for Silent Thunder? Because it definitely has that kind of Top Gun movie vibe on Silent Thunder. That's a really cool video you guys did.
Yeah, that was awesome. We rented this warehouse, like this big industrial area, like 2,000 square meter place, and we built the stage ourselves. Like we rented, all the parts for a construction, construction building stuff, and we rented the lights and moving heads and backline and everything, and we made it all up the stage. And then Danny found this movie project. I don't know that much about it, but he bought the rights to use like 90 seconds of those video clips that you can see in the video. So when you put it all together, it looks like a video that's made in 1989, as you said, with the Top Gun references and the flight suits and everything that we did. It turned out great. Really happy about it.
Absolutely, it's tremendous. And you've been in the band for 3 years now. Kind of talk about what you knew about Crazy Lixx, how it kind of came about that you joined the band. Obviously, it's I don't think it's any surprise that you joined the band in 16. You come out with Rough Justice in 17, which was your best work, the band's best work till that time, and now an even better album with Forever Wild. Just talk about kind of how you became knowledgeable about Crazy Lixx and how you wound up joining the band 3 years ago, and what your journey's been like with them the last 3 years.
Yeah, that's a funny story, actually. I was a huge fan of Crazy Lixx back in 2006, something like that. I was 18 years old or something. I found out Crazy Lixx. They were on a really small level, playing like small clubs and just local shows or whatever. And I saw them in my hometown, and I loved the band. And I've been around ever since. I've seen them maybe 20, 30 times live growing up. And then back in 2013, they asked me to record the guitars in my studio, which was going to be the sorry, I forgot the name of the album. Riot Avenue. Sorry. Riot Avenue. They asked me to record guitars in my studio for Riot Avenue. And so we did, and we got to know each other a little bit better. But unfortunately, this album was not well accepted by the fans, and they lost members in the process. The bass player left, the drummer left, and they went with another kind of. They tried to record a different album than New Religion. Don't ask me why, but they wanted to approach like rock and roll, airborne AC/DC vibe, and that was the wrong decision, obviously. So and after that, they had to continue making albums to prove that they were still like this 80s band. But I think they lost a lot of fans in that area, like 2013, 14. Then in 2015, they had another problem because Liam, he left the band and moved out of town back to his hometown in northern Sweden. And they called me and asked me to join them for a couple of festival shows, summer of 2015. So I was the stand-in guitar player for Ed for a couple of festivals. We played Bang Your Head in Germany and a big festival in Italy. And later that year, Andreas told us that he would have to leave the band because he he joined this British band, Inglorious. So then they were out guitar player again, and Danny had like two small kids at home, and he didn't want to tour that much. Actually, they were on the verge of like ending the band, calling it. And then I told him that I knew this guitar player from another band in my neighborhood, Chrissy Olsen, and they tried us out, like me and him together, and they tried out a couple of other guys as well, but we fit perfectly, both socially and musically. So we decided to try like one more year. So 2016 was like a tryout for us, and we did a couple of shows, and we sounded like everyone told us that we sounded better than ever, because me and Chrissy, we are really into like equipment. We have lots of guitars and amplifiers, like digital stuff and analog, and we tried out what sounded the best for me and him. So first off, this is the first time the band has toured with like two guitar players that have the same equipment on all shows. So we sounded better and better. And then we came across this Friday the 13th game. They wanted to do the soundtrack or a couple of songs. So Danny wrote XIII and Killer, and they've sorry, what's the name?
Kiss of
Live
Judas.
Before I Die. Live
Okay.
Before I Die. Yeah. So we recorded these 3 songs in my studio in the summer of 2016, and then they turned out really great, and the record company loved the songs, and the game company loved the songs, and so this kind of this was the beginning of recording Rough Justice, because we already had 3 songs, we had a sound. So we just continued making 7 more songs, and that was that's how Rough Justice was made, actually. So it was made in my studio, and like as a tryout to try our gear and like how we would sound together on a record. So that turned out great.
Well, it's unbelievable to think of where the band was on the brink of breaking up, to now 2 albums that are unbelievable, and now Forever Wild, to get to this point where this album literally, and we had Jens Lundgren, bass player, on whenever Rough Justice came out, and he talked about kind of his influences. Jens, you tell us, do you kind of share a lot of the same influences as the other members of Crazy Lixx? It's no question that the band sounds very similar to so many, hard rock bands from the 80s, whether it be Def Leppard, LA Guns, Alice Cooper, Whitesnake, so much of that sound. Is that kind of what you grew up listening to? Is that kind of the music that you grew up on as well?
I think my influences are almost the same as Danny's and Jen's. We have like the same music taste, basically. Motley Crue, Kiss, Aerosmith, Def Leppard, Whitesnake, and me and Danny, we love like Danger Danger, Rat, Europe, Roxette. So we have a lot of what?
That's awesome. I'm a huge Roxette fan. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you guys, the influences are all there for you too. So how important is that to share that? Because in a lot of bands, you have so many different opinions and so many different, but for a lot of you guys to kind of share that, and where does it come from? I mean, you're a younger guy, you're younger than me, by quite a bit. I'm 35 and you're younger than me. You're younger than a lot of the guys even in Crazy Lixx. So where does that come from? How does it happen?
How does it happen? That we're in different ages, or what do you mean?
That you grew up listening to that, growing up in Sweden and listening to music from that era when all right.
Yeah, I mean, all right. I don't know. I think I saw like this talent show on TV when I was 7 or something, and there was a guy dressed like Joey Tempest from Europe, in leather pants and a wig, and singing Final Countdown, and I was hooked instantly. And I asked my parents, like, what is this? And I didn't. My parents didn't listen to hard rock or anything like that, and they said, it's a famous Swedish band in Europe, and I wanted to listen more to them, and I think I got a CD or something, and then the weekend after, in the same talent show on TV, there was a guy dressed like Angus Young in AC/DC, and he was my favorite guitar player growing up. So I played a lot of AC/DC stuff, the blues, rock and roll stuff. But the 80s attracted me more, with the image and the big choruses with the big choirs and synthesizers and all that. So I mean, you don't find that music easily in Sweden because it's not that popular. So you really have to dig to find that music, And but nowadays you have the rock stations, radio stations. They play a lot of 80s hair metal. But when I grew up, you didn't find that stuff, and we sure didn't have internet until I was 16, I think, and then we had this this really slow internet, so it took like 1 hour to download one song, and it cost my parents like a fortune. So they they ended up buying records because that was cheaper than downloading them, and downloading is wrong, so you shouldn't do that, right?
And the ironic thing about that is that now people in America, to find this kind of music, have to go to the Swedish bands to find it. It's you guys, Crash Diet, Hardcore Superstar, all amazing bands that have sort of kept that flag flying over these years. That's kind of strange, isn't it, that you have now Americans seeking out this kind of music in Sweden, whereas you were having to come to American bands. Now we have to come to bands like Crazy Lixx and Crash Diet that have kept this alive, and I think that's really important and that's really cool. And I think from you guys, is there kind of a frustration about maybe not becoming as popular in America as you should be right now? Is there a frustration about that? Because you got, I mean, honestly, if Forever Wild came out in 1989, it's number one everywhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's so fun to read that. I mean, people tell us all the time, "Oh, why didn't you came out in the 80s? You would have been huge, man." Yeah, but I mean, if I was born in the 60s, maybe I wouldn't even end up playing 80s rock and roll. But here we are playing the music we love, and I mean, we have a great record company that allows us to play the music we want, and they don't interfere with our music or the mix and stuff. And we want it to sound this way. We have a close discussion with a mixing engineer to like, no, we want this snare drum from this Rat album Detonator from 1990, but we need a kick drum from Danger Danger's first album in 89. So it's actually it's so much fun doing an 80s record in 2019 or 18 when we did for a while, because we have all this equipment, and Danny, he's a great songwriter and producer, and together we really find the sound, and we make it the way we want it to sound. And as you said, with Americans coming to Sweden to listen to 80s music, that's a lot of fun, because in 2008 when I was 20, we flew to Los Angeles to meet up with a friend who moved there to become a rock star, playing in different bands and stuff. And we thought that the strip would look like we saw in Motley Crue movies, from the 80s, but it wasn't what we expected it to be. But today's climate in Europe, I mean, it's more 1989 now than ever in Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, when we come to festivals in Belgium or Germany or Italy, like this weekend, I mean, there's so many people with big hair and leather pants, and I mean, they have the looks that, I mean, people haven't looked like that in Sweden for 30 years. So that's so fun to see that it's a growing genre, and people really love everything about it. So the retro.
It doesn't hurt all Swedish people are just very attractive. It's be different here in America when you have fat slobs dressed like that. But like, you guys go out there and you guys all look like you're, from like pinup models, and and that goes for the women too. God, I've never seen anything like it. I told that to Jens a few years ago. I was like, I just don't understand what it is about Sweden and the attractive people that are there. It's unbelievable, and that doesn't hurt. Like when you got that image and you've got, you look like Motley Crue in 1981. It really helps. Now I got to ask you, do you have a favorite song on Forever Wild? Because as big of a fan of the guitar and the soaring guitars that are on this, I'm a huge fan right now of the song Eagle. To me, that's my favorite song on the album as of right now. What's your favorite from Forever Wild?
I mean, it changes. I mean, during the production, I thought definitely Eagle was my favorite song because of the rhythm to it and the choruses. And I mean, I love do 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 do. It's so much Def Leppard, but it's not a Def Leppard song. I know, so I really love it, and it's I think it's the first song I wrote, the first solo I did on this album, and turned out great. But I think now I'm more into the title song, or the last song, "Never Die Forever Wild," because I love the tempo of it, the attitude, and the outro solos where me and Chrissy, we go wild. We do like 4 bars each, and it's like a solo battle, and then Joel does a crazy drum fill in the middle of the solo, and it's like chaos. But I can never stop listening to it. I have to rewind. When the song is finished, I always rewind like 30 seconds to listen to the chaos again, because it's and then you leave with a great feeling when the album is done. You want to hear it again.
It does. I think it's important nowadays in rock music when, there's so many veteran acts that I'm still such a huge fan of. I mean, I just saw the Kiss farewell tour. I just was at Rocklahoma and saw Bush and Jackal and so many bands that I'm just such a huge fan of still that I still get to see. But as those bands kind of, slowly start, passing away or retiring, I mean, we saw in the last few years, Twisted Sister, Motley Crue, Lemmy from Motorhead passes away. So many bands are just no more. How important is it, do you think, to have a band like you guys, for fans to really believe in rock and roll? Because to me, you guys bridge the gap between fans and carrying this on into the future. So how important is that, for you guys, that you are kind of waving the flag for this genre of music going forward?
I think it's really important. And also it's important for us to have bands like Hardcore Superstar and Crash Diet and, other bands, because it's so hard when you're alone trying to do this sub-genre that it actually is right now. But it helps that it's becoming more and more popular to play this kind of music. And people they really think that like there is something happening in Sweden. I know, there's a lot of good bands in Sweden, or from Scandinavia for that matter. And I know there's not a lot of big giants still out there doing this kind of genre. But I think like the new Motley Crue movie, that opens so many new fans. I mean, there's so many young people watching that movie and likes what I hear and listen to Motley Crue, and then they find other bands that still tours. And I think that's what makes it keep going. So it's really important.
You shared the stage with some pretty big bands. You've been on some big festivals, played with a lot of bands. Have you had any moments where maybe you played at a festival or with a band that you really liked growing up, that maybe came over and talked to you, or gave you some advice? Or has there been any moments like that where you've been able to connect with some bands or play with some bands that you're a big fan of growing up?
Yeah, actually, I'm a huge fan of Danger Danger, and we played a lot of festivals with them and Defiance. So I mean, and Bruno Ravel, the bass player, and he's the producer of the band. I mean, we played in England last year, a festival with a lot of bands, TNT, Skid Row, and Danger, and we all hang out backstage and talked about record production and how to record drums in the best way and what synthesizers they used back in '89 and what synthesizers they use today. And that's a childhood dream to talk to your heroes and hear them tell you all those stories. And I'm also a huge fan of The Darkness, and I met Justin and Dan a couple of times last year at Sweden Rock Festival, and we hung out backstage, and Dan had his daughter with him, so we just talked for a few minutes. But it's so cool to hang out with bands that you adore, and then you're at almost the same level when you're in the backstage area in the restaurant, and you nod at each other and maybe have a coffee together and just talk for a few minutes. So that's awesome.
Well, Jens, I'll tell you what, I'm on Amazon right now looking at the reviews for Forever Wild, and I'm just it just really brings a smile to my face to see so many great reviews. Some people saying this is as good as anything you'll hear in this style. The perfect summer metal album. That's exactly what it exemplifies for me as well. So you guys have done something here that to me is timeless, and it's again, to me, and not exaggerating it, to me it's in the last decade, it is the best hard rock album to come out in the last decade, and I mean that. And I just wish you guys nothing but success going forward, man. You guys have really created an unbelievable niche for so many people, and we just got to get you here to America sometime, man, so we could do it the right way. We got to get you guys out to the whiskey so you could play some of the clubs out in Hollywood. I know that would be cool for you guys as well, man. We got to make that happen.
Yeah, definitely. That would be cool.
Well, what I know it's late out there in Sweden. Thanks so much for joining us from Sweden here. We're 7 hours behind you, so I know it was hard to kind of create a time, so we can't thank you enough for staying up late with us and talking about the album and talking about this. Good luck on the tour coming up. We're definitely going to be looking for you guys out there at Wacken and your Germany shows in Bulgaria and certainly in Japan in September. Best of luck out there on the road, my friend, and we will catch up soon. The album's amazing, and can't thank you enough for joining us.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for calling. Take care.
You bet. Take care, man.
Yeah.
Thanks. Huge thanks to Jens Lundgren for joining us all the way from Sweden. He stayed up very late. They're 7 hours ahead of us just to make that happen. I appreciate him so much. The bands just got back from Italy like yesterday, and here they are. Jens is on the phone with us via Skype. Cannot thank him enough for talking to us, for really just getting that interview, and really solidifies my feelings about this band and this album. The band is Crazy Lixx. The album's Forever Wild. You heard the interview. You heard from Jens Lundgren, the guitarist from Crazy Lixx. He's responsible for some of this melodic masterpiece that you hear. Of course, he's very in tune with equipment and the recording process. I told him that the album kind of reminded me of Def Leppard's Pyromania. It really does. That sleek production value that the boys from Def Leppard got from Mutt Lange back in 1983. So Crazy Lixx, go to their website, crazylixx.com. A lot of big things coming up from them. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of big things coming up for us the rest of the summer. We're going to be out on the road, covering shows, doing interviews. Guys, it's what we do, and we appreciate you subscribing to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, as iTunes is no more. We're not going to say the word iTunes anymore because the Apple's killing it. So this is Apple Podcasts. If you had iTunes, you have an iPhone, you've got Apple Podcasts already on your phone, so subscribe that way. Or Google Play Music, of course, on Android, and we're also on Spotify, so subscribe any way that you choose to get the show. Be sure you subscribe, leave us some feedback. We always appreciate it. Guys, there is so much coming up. This is the spring and summer months, and that means getting outside, hopefully braving some tornadic weather if you're in the Midwest like I am, but hopefully it's leading to more time at the lake with your friends, outside, live music, cold beverages. That's what we're about here on the Music Mania podcast, and don't you forget it. So many big things coming up, huge guests, big interviews. There's so much more to come here on the Music Mania podcast. Stay tuned all summer long. Your money stays and plays with us right here on the Music Mania podcast.